Hello, everyone, and welcome to APS webinars. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you want to hear about future APS webinars, make sure you're on our email list. You can sign up at the link that's on the front page that you should be able to see. It is aps.org/careers/guidance/webinars. Today's webinar will be looking at physics careers to the bachelor's degree and beyond. I'm Elizabeth Hook, and I will be your host for today's broadcast. Thank you for joining us. APS webinars are brought to you as a service of the American Physical Society, connecting you with the expertise of individuals who can offer insight into physics careers, educational programs, and professional development for students, working physicists, and educators. Today's webinar will look into physics career options for physicists with a bachelor's degree and discuss how career options change as you move from having a bachelor's to an advanced degree. We'll be recording today's webinar, and after the event, you should receive an email with a link to the video. Please give us about 24 hours to make sure that the video is correct. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the questions panel on the right side of your screen. We will be doing a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Your moderator for today's broadcast is Stephen Lambert, the Industrial Physics Fellow at APS, and he will be introducing our presenter. So take it away, Stephen.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Today we have Crystal Bailey joining us to talk about the career options for physics degree holders. Dr. Crystal Bailey is the Careers Program Manager at the American Physical Society here in College Park, Maryland. At APS, Dr. Bailey works on projects to inform students, early career physicists, and their mentors about the broad range of careers available to those with physics training. She also develops resources to help students become more successful professionals and faculty to become more effective career mentors. The programs she oversees at APS include the APS Job Board, APS Job Fairs, career panels, and workshops at APS meetings, the Physics Insight slideshow, the APS Careers website, and activities of the APS Committee on Careers and Professional Development. So she's quite busy, as you can see. Before coming to APS, Dr. Bailey did research in nuclear physics at Indiana University, for which she earned her Ph.D. in 2009. So, Crystal, why don't you take it away and begin the presentation?
All right. Well, thank you so much, both Elizabeth and Stephen, for that introduction. And welcome, everybody, to the webinar. I'm very glad to see all of you here. Right. So let's get started. So who is a physicist? I want to take a step back and kind of examine this question because I think it's important for this discussion. I say that a physicist is anybody with a physics degree. And that is a physics bachelor's, BA, BS, master's student, Ph.D. student. Anyone with a physics degree is a physicist. Why do we define physicist in this way? Well, first of all, this definition is actually consistent with other disciplines. So, for example, chemistry, it's very typical, or engineering, for example, to have a chemistry bachelor graduate and be considered a chemist, and an engineering bachelor graduate and be considered an engineer. So it should, that's what other disciplines do, and I think we should be consistent with that. It defines a common set of experiences and even textbooks. So whether you're talking about a PhD or a master's or a bachelor's student, graduate, maybe we've all had Griffith C&M, maybe we all know about Tipler or maybe Jackson, if you're a master or a PhD student. And we know what the culture is like in the departments, and we have that in common. And I think that that's a really important part of what makes us all physicists. More importantly, I think this inclusive view is much better for the survival of the discipline. We can't just only think about the people who matter or the people whose futures we need to be concerned about in terms of careers should be PhD physicists. I think that that is not good for our discipline. And there's some evidence to support that, actually. What makes us all physicists? Well, as I said, the shared experiences create a familiarity, not just with physics concepts, but also the culture of the discipline. But more importantly, and I think this is the most important and key thing, is that even a basic physics training will impart essential problem-solving skills. Basically, you learn how to think. And that is a hallmark of a physicist. And an employer will tell you that that's the hallmark of a physicist, whether they're talking about a bachelor's graduate, master's, or Ph.D. graduate. So that's really at the core of what makes us special as physicists. Where do physicists work? The million-dollar question. Probably not where you think. Yeah, how do we define a traditional physicist? Is it a physics professor? Is it a PhD researcher? Is it the most common career path? Is that how we should define a physicist? Well, according to the AIP Statistical Research Center, about 1 in 7 physics bachelors will actually choose to finish a PhD in physics. A certain proportion, and you'll see these numbers later, a certain proportion will go into graduate school in other sciences, and a certain proportion will go on and get their physics PhD, and some will get a master's, or some will go right into the workforce with a bachelor's degree. So about 1 in 7 will get that physics PhD. So if that's how we define it, we're already kind of talking about a very small subset. That translates to about 14% of all physics degree holders becoming physics PhDs. And if we define, quote, traditional physicist in that way, that doesn't make any sense at all, because we're already cutting out a lot of people. All right, so let's look at where they actually end up. We'll start with the bachelor's degree recipients. So all of these statistics, by the way, that I'm going to share with you are from the AIP Statistical Research Center. They do really, really excellent work tracking employment data, salary data, all kinds of great stuff. So I highly encourage all of you to go onto their website, aip.org/statistics, to get the full reports on this. But according to one of their most recent reports, if you look at where physics bachelors went after getting their degree, between 1995 and 2007, about 1/3 to 1/2 of bachelor's degree recipients went directly into the workforce. You can see that. I think you can see my mouse. You can see this line here. The remainder went on to grad school, mostly physics and astronomy, as you can see here, but a significant proportion went to grad school in other fields. And another wonderful bit to notice is that so few are unemployed, less than 7% during that entire time span. So that's really, really great news. If you know anybody who is asking you, well, why are you a physics bachelor? There's nothing you can do but be a professor, and that's not true, and there's a lot of good jobs out there. So now let's take a closer look. So if you look at the bachelors who actually went straight into the workforce and got initial employment after getting their degree, they found employment in a variety of areas. So you can see high school teaching is one big area for bachelors who go straight into the workforce. Actually, 10%, about the same number, go into work in national labs, and those are really interesting positions because they're very technical, and you're helping a lot of users kind of use the facility and run the equipment. So that's another area that's pretty interesting. College and university, this 13%, those are largely people who have bachelor's degrees who are working for a period of time before eventually going on to get an advanced degree. But the vast majority, as you can see, are in the private sector, 53%. Now let's take a closer look at that little slice of the pie. Of those who went initial employment in the private sector, the vast majority went into non-STEM fields, and actually engineering and computer science are the two largest areas where they went. About 1/4 of those non-STEM. That is a wide range of things. Banking was actually one of the areas that the non-STEM physics graduates went into. Other STEM fields besides engineering, computer science. But the large majority, over 50%, are engineering and computer science. And they would even have engineer and computer scientist or analyst in their title. But as you can see, they're highly employable. Like I said, only 7% unemployment rate in a wide variety of career paths. Now, if you look at salaries, this is a little bit of an outdated graph, unfortunately. I think it's hard for the SRC to get their hands on good comprehensive data. But if you look, physics bachelors, when you talk about the range of initial starting salaries, are higher than many technical fields, including mechanical engineering. Certainly higher than math, chemistry, biology, psychology, all of these other fields. Physics really pays very, very well compared to these other areas. The reason it's such a wide span is that this salary range also includes the non-STEM employed physics bachelors. So they kind of make up the lower end of the spectrum. The STEM private sector ones are the higher end. I also like to notice that electrical engineering and physics kind of stop at the same high point, and that's actually because they're literally the same jobs. And at the time that this report came out, the median starting salary for physics bachelor's degree had increased by $10,000 since 2003. Now let's talk about a couple of real people who fit this profile, who have bachelor's degrees and then went into the workforce. And by the way, you can read about these and other physicists on our online careers website. We have a library of physicist profiles, and I'll show the link to you later so you can access that. But you can read more about these guys and many other really interesting sort of stories in our career profiles library. So first, Maggie Seeds. She has her physics bachelor's degree. She is a consultant at Clarkson Consulting in North Carolina. She had originally gotten her physics bachelor because she was fascinated by astronomy, but as her career kind of went on, she had this opportunity to work as a consultant and discovered that she really, really loved it. And what she said she really likes about it is that she really gets to play a lot of different roles depending on clients' needs as a consultant. So maybe she has to bring some technical expertise in or think about a problem technically. Sometimes she gets to kind of strategize and think more big picture. She says that it's her physics background that allows her to think analytically and examine problems from lots of different angles. Again, the physicist as a problem solver and knowing how to think about a situation. She also says, of course, learning how to persevere through tough situations was something that she learned as a physics bachelor, as any of us who have taken physics exams will know. And then we also have Aaron Weiss. Aaron is a really interesting story. He got his bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado Boulder, and now he is the head of the electrical engineering group at Google's Advanced Technology and Projects division, basically kind of a skunk labs area. He can't really talk that much about what he does because it's all very secret. But basically, when he was younger, he was very curious about the world and the universe, and when he realized that physics could give him this really in-depth sort of perspective and help him understand how the universe worked, it was very fascinating to him. And today, he also discovered that he really loves building, and he loved working with electronics, and now he can combine his sort of understanding of the universe and how the universe works with his very highly developed technical ability to build things. And now he creates devices that are on the cutting edge of technology. So very, very good success story. He really loves his job. Now, thinking beyond the bachelor's degree, the most recent statistics of the MCAT scores, published again by the AIP Statistical Research Center, you can see that physics majors outperform many other majors, including pre-med, actually by quite a bit on all three sections of the MCAT. So that's pretty amazing. And, so if you happen to be interested in medicine or going into a career in medicine, actually being a physics major is a really, really wonderful thing, because the training that you get as a physics major will actually help you do well on the MCAT. Furthermore, they do account for less than 1% of individuals taking the exam, and that actually kind of makes the applicants stand out. Not only would they have this high score, not a lot of physics majors are actually doing that. So those things combined can really help you stand out on a medical school application. Law school, also very interesting. Physics majors received one of the highest average LSAT scores compared to other majors. Again, including pre-law. Pre-law is kind of here. Physics and math kind of way, way up here. So a physics bachelor's degree provides excellent training for careers in medicine and in law, in case that's something that you're interested in. Now, we're going to move beyond the bachelor's degree and talk a little bit about master's degrees. So between 2009 and 2011, 50% of physics master's recipients entered or remained in the workforce. And it's important to say when I'm quoting these statistics, the later graph that I'm going to show does not include individuals who had a bachelor's degree and then earned their master's while working in their jobs. That's actually something that happens a lot. And depending on whether or not they're entering the workforce with a master's, or if they get a master's degree while they're working, that makes a big difference in terms of salary. So again, the majority, the largest sort of grouping are physics master's degrees recipients who go into the workforce in the private sector. These jobs are almost entirely full-time STEM occupations. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. They're all very technical types of work. One really great sort of analogy that was given to me once about the kind of the degree breakdown, depending on what degree path you're in a certain company in the private sector. If you have a bachelor's degree, maybe you'll be working on sort of a part of a problem, like a small part of a problem, on a team, an interdisciplinary team with other engineering and other STEM science graduates. If you're a master's degree recipient in that company, you might be working with those teams of bachelor's recipients on the problem. Maybe you're helping them to solve more difficult issues or helping them troubleshoot problems. You might be in a managerial position where you're managing that group, you're managing their resources, you're reporting to people higher up in the chain, you're making sure that the projects stay on task. And then if you're a PhD in that company, maybe you're in the research and development sector and you're researching, you're doing scientific research on new processes and new products. So the point being that in the private sector, there are actually roles for each degree stage. They're just different roles. So depending on what those are, that might determine what kind of a degree you might be interested in getting if you want to go in the private sector. So anyway, the median starting salary for these master's degree recipients in the private sector is $60,000. Another area, the next biggest area, is colleges and universities. So the master's recipients in college and universities, typically they might be adjunct faculty or assistant faculty. They're also research associates, lab managers. Oh, the adjunct faculty, I should add, are mostly at two-year colleges or community colleges. And the median starting salary for that group was $38,500, according to the report. There's also a lot of high school teachers who also have master's degrees in physics. They were teaching not only physics, but also chemistry and math, typically, and other science fields. It can be very difficult to track what the starting salary is because it really varies widely from state to state. But the report did say that for those who were continuing employment after earning their master's, they actually started receiving about, on average, $13,000 more than new hires. So having that master's degree and earning it while they were teaching really boosted their earning potential. Another area, civilian government. These are positions mostly at national labs, armed service branches, trademark office. Those are actually pretty high-paying jobs. About the median was $57,000. And then about 12% was other. And that includes active military and kind of, again, a wide range of some non-STEM fields, but it's kind of a broad range of areas that are not in these main categories. And these are of those who entered or remained in the workforce after getting their master's degree. Of course, within the remaining quantity, some will have gone to get their PhD in physics and some getting a PhD in other fields. Not surprisingly, physics master's degree holders working in the private sector earn considerably more than their colleagues at colleges and universities. So in this comparison, the ones in the private sector, again, a wide range, but the median was 60 roughly. And the colleges and universities was significantly less. And again, this does not include those who earned their degree while they were actually working in the private sector. According to the report, that average salary was about $83,000 per year. So a physics master's degree will open the door to more advanced positions in a variety of technical fields with higher salaries. So here's a couple folks with master's degrees. Sam Wurtzel is a guy who was actually, he earned his master's, I think, after he started his company. So he started his company with a bachelor's degree in physics. He got his bachelor's degree in engineering and physics at Brown University and a master's in physics at University of Colorado Boulder. His inspiration arose out of frustration. He was a physics grad student, like first-year grad student, and he got tired of searching through those huge paper catalogs with all the parts. I know them well, experienced that. And he was able to actually focus his frustration and learned a little bit about entrepreneurship and created his own company, Octopart Inc., which is an online part search engine. Today it serves over 700,000 users, and he's very successful and really enjoys his life as a CEO and founder of this company. And then there's also Ginger Carrick, who has a physics master's degree. She's flight director at the NASA Johnson Space Center. Her background, she got her bachelor's degree in physics and her master's in physics from Texas Tech. Her original goal, she really wanted to become an astronaut or a basketball player, one or the other, kind of disparate interests, but very interesting. And her life circumstances really just did not conspire around either one of those outcomes. And that's one thing you need to know about life, is that you can make your plans and understand that your life will not be a straight line, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. So you just have to recognize good opportunities and, more importantly, be aware of all your opportunities. That's key. The door opened, though, in spite of those doors closing, for her to actually be flight director for NASA. So instead of actually going into space, she still uses her physics training every day to solve problems creatively and quickly. She's always under pressure to come up with a quick solution and to help astronauts get home safely. So in a sense, I imagine that's as rewarding, if not more so, than actually going herself. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about physics PhDs. So there's also a report on the initial employment of physics PhDs. And at the time of the most recent report in 2014, they found the number of physics PhDs confirmed in the US to be the highest in the past century. The exact number, 1,762. And you see, total, that's more than we've ever had. And granted, a significant contribution of that is non-US citizens receiving PhDs in the US, so this includes both citizens and non-citizens. Based on current enrollments, we should expect PhD production to level off at around 1,700 per year in the next 4 years. So we can expect to continue putting large numbers of physics PhDs into the workforce. What are these PhDs doing with their degrees? So this is a table showing the employment type of physics PhDs by sector 1 year after their degree. So this is where they are 1 year after receiving their degrees. Well, overall, if you look at the overall column, 57% are in the academic sector. Okay, not too surprising. But wait, 74% of those are, 74% of those are postdoc, not of the total, but 74% of the postdoc positions are academic. 78% of the other temporary positions are in academic. So the point being, if you look at postdoc and other temporary positions, the vast majority of those are in the academic sector. The vast majority of those potentially permanent jobs are actually in the private sector. So many are going into the academic sector and many are going into postdoc positions or other temporary positions. The majority of graduates who initially become postdocs are in academic settings and the remainder are in national labs. Why do they go into these postdoc positions, these temporary positions? Well, again, it's not that surprising. In the same report or on initial employment of PhDs, 32%, the largest percentage of them said it was a necessary step to get desired future position. And in most cases, they were thinking to get an academic position. And that's not a crazy idea, because if you look, this graph shows the immediate previous employment for new physics faculty hires in 2007 and 2008, not surprisingly, at both bachelor serving and PhD serving institutions, most of them came directly from a postdoc. The next highest was research scientist, or a tenured or tenure track professor at another university might go and apply for a tenured or tenure track job at another university. If you look at the PhD serving, only 1% came straight out of getting their graduate PhD degree. Slightly different breakdown in the bachelor serving institutions, but still a very small number. So yeah, research will show that at PhD granting universities, previous experience as a postdoc or as faculty is a very strong indicator of the likelihood of being a successful faculty hire. And being a new faculty hire with only a graduate degree is very unlikely, and not extremely, but unlikely, even at bachelor's granting institutions. However, when you actually look at the number of departures of tenured and tenure-track faculty, you can see that that number has not really changed a whole lot. So the total is here in this graph, and then there's master's serving, PhD serving, bachelor serving. And here's the statement from the report. And going back to 2007 and 2008, while there were about 350 departures by tenured and tenure-track faculty during the 06-07 academic year, there were 475 recruitments, that means job searches, for the same time frame, with 342 tenured and tenure-track faculty members hired in the following year. That is consistent with what they have seen in prior years. So the job market for faculty in universities and other institutions is stable, meaning that there are not many jobs being lost, and at the same time, not many are being created either. I mean, 350 departures, 342 new hires the following year. It's basically a workforce that's kind of replacing itself. Now, there is some indication that there is an uptick in the number of hires for those temporary assistant faculty. You know, they're full-time, but they're 2-year appointments, and there's no guarantee, and they're not tenure track. And that is part of the changing landscape that affects academic institutions and the funding situation that they face. But in terms of the tenured and the permanent jobs, they're not increasing. And given that we're graduating more than 1,700 PhDs per year, you saw how many, according to the graph, that we're now graduating, more of half of them going into postdocs with an intention of continuing as physics faculty, the supply will continue to outweigh the demand for tenure-track academic career paths. But what about the private sector? You know, we talked about bachelor's careers in the private sector, master's careers in the private sector. What about PhDs? Well, that graph that we saw a couple slides ago, 64% of graduates who initially went into permanent employment were in the private sector. According to the NSF survey of doctoral recipients, in 2010, the private sector was the largest single employment base of physics PhDs. It's about 47%, and the next highest was 4-year colleges at 38%. It was also true in 2001, where the number was 46%, and in 1993, when the private sector employed 46%. And this is actually a graph that I also got from my contact at AIP. The same data has shown consistent support for physics PhDs in the private sector since 1971, since the data was taken. The NSF survey of doctoral recipients was taken. So industry has been the largest employment base for physics PhDs for decades. Okay, so to summarize, faculty positions are not the most common career path for physicists. Industry is the largest employment base for physics PhDs and masters and bachelors. Now, I love this graphic because to me it represents many students, and particularly graduate students and postdoc students and early career physicists, especially those in grad school and just after. We're all looking through our binoculars, trained on the future career of academic physics. Meanwhile, this path in front of you is curving like crazy. And, you know, if you're focused on the one thing far away through this very, very narrow scope, you're going to walk right off your path, okay? It will not be a straight line. And smart planning means broadening your focus. Take those binoculars off. Look around. You need to be aware of and prepared for all possibilities. That's the only way you're going to navigate a path that will move. It has moved for everyone. Anyone you ever talk to will tell you, no one ever woke up at the age of 12 and said, I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life, and then they did it. It's not how it works. So I'm never discouraging anyone. Any career path you want, go for it. I'm saying be aware of more than just one possibility. That will increase your likelihood of being successful. There's a lot of great science to be done, an opportunity to be found in a lot of places. Okay, really quickly, before we get to the questions, I want to just tell you about a few resources that we have. First, there's the online professional development guide, and this is something on the APS Careers website. We have several different webinars that we've done over the years, and I highly recommend Peter Fisk does Putting Your Science to Work. It's an absolutely phenomenal, comprehensive webinar that's basically every stage of preparing for your future career, especially non-academic careers. You have to be a member to access that, but I highly recommend it. There's also Megan Anzelk, who got her Ph.D. in high energy physics, and now she is very senior. She was director of predictive modeling. She might be doing something more senior now at CNA Insurance. You can watch her webinar on our website. But if you don't want to watch their full webinars, the online professional development guide has chapters that are organized around key elements of professional development, like self-assessment, networking, interviewing, negotiation, writing a good resume, and each chapter provides comprehensive guidance. Especially what I think is cool are 5-minute clips from each of these webinars on our website that pertain specifically to that topic. So it's really a great resource. I highly recommend each of you just click through, read it, watch the clips. They're really amazingly helpful stuff. And that's the URL, go.aps.org/physicspdguide. Okay? By the way, these slides will be available on the webinar page that you registered on. So they will be available, and you can get that information here as well. APS Careers website. Like I told you before, we have a library of physicist profiles, folks from a great diversity of degree and career paths. So you can click through, read about their stories. Our job prospect pages we're very proud of. These are profiles not of people, but actually of common tracks for physicists. So, for example, physics Ph.D.s doing R&D in the private sector, physics bachelors in national labs, high school physics teachers. We're working on creating kind of something similar to what the Bureau of Labor Statistics has, but written by physicists for physicists, about what are the typical salaries, what's the job outlook for that track, what can you expect, how do you advance in that track, and it also links to any other statistics information or profiles on the website that pertain to that track. So it's a really great resource. We also have kind of a clearinghouse of physics employment and salary information. So all the graphs and data that I showed from the AIP Statistical Research Center, if you just go on our careers site and click statistical data, it'll show you the thumbnail, and it'll also give you the link through to the full report. And our APS webinars archive, every webinar we've ever done, it's on-demand viewing. Many of them are on YouTube. The easiest way to get to it is go click on this webinars for physicists. It's all on the website. The APS job board, we actually have a job board that's part of a shared database with Physics Today, IEEE Computing, AVS, and others. That means that any job posted by employers on any of those sites is visible through our portal. And if you put your resume out there, it's searchable by employers looking through any of those portals. And you can apply for positions directly through the Job Center. You can search on keywords like 4-year degree if you want to see what's out there for physics bachelors right now. Just go there, careers.aps.org, click the little filter that says degree, and click 4-year degree, and it'll show you what's out there. We also have a lot of panels and networking opportunities at our meetings. So every year at the March meeting, if you're at the March meeting, we have started hosting an industrial careers workshop where we bring together some industry folks, and it's basically an open Q&A where you can talk to them about their careers in industry. Stephen, our moderator, has helped, been an organizer for that, and we get over 250 students who come to that every year. It's very popular. So if you're ever at the March meeting, keep an eye out for that. We also have other panels and networking receptions. There's a lunch with the experts where you can sign up to have lunch with various experts, including a significant representation from industry. And we have the job fair at the APS March meeting and the Division of Plasma Physics meeting. We also have a special series of events just for undergraduate students, and everyone should know about this, the Future of Physics Days. They're every year at both the March and the April meeting. And the typical events are, we have career workshops that are specifically designed for undergraduate attendees. We have a graduate school fair where students can meet face-to-face with representatives from grad programs. We have student research sessions, which are special research sessions for undergrads only. Each of those students are judged, or I should say evaluated, we like that word better, and given written feedback. And the top presenters, in fact, all students who present will get a recognition at a fun reception. At April meeting, it's a brunch, and at March meeting, we do a dance party. We also have official Future of Physics Days t-shirts, and you guys get to choose the caption. We always have a caption contest. All you have to do is follow our social media, APS Physics social media, Facebook, Twitter. All that information is there. You can enter your caption, and the top ones, we have a like vote. That was the one we had from last year. And we also print out a special undergrad epitome for students highlighting events of interest to undergrads. So aps.org, keyword future physics. One last thing I will briefly mention. We have APS Local Links, which is a great new program where they're basically locally based gatherings of students and physicists from academia, industry, and national labs. These groups meet every 6 to 8 weeks. They're usually in an informal location. The goal of these groups is to build mutually beneficial relationships so the students can learn about non-academic careers, and the industry folks can actually recruit students for their positions. And we have several of these sites going. They've been going for over a year now. And I have it on good authority that many industry folks attend these events to recruit. And in fact, I recently heard of one industry person coming and actually recruiting some new employees at the Local Links meeting. The current sites are in Austin, Boston, DC, Denver, Silicon Valley, and St. Louis, and Tampa Bay, Orlando. If you are interested, we have LinkedIn groups for each one. If you live in one of those places and you want to sign up to participate, go to this URL. If you're interested in actually starting one in your area, you can also go to this URL for the contact information for my colleague who runs it. Her name's Courtney Bucher. Okay. And with that, I will wrap up. This is a great picture. This is all the undergrads at last year's March meeting. So I love this picture. Anyway, so I'm ready to take your questions.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. If anyone has questions, please go ahead and submit them on the website, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Why don't we start off with one? Crystal, you said that there's a lot of opportunity in industry, and that most physicists will, or the majority of physicists will wind up working there. Can you talk about how people could connect with physicists who are in industry now?
Absolutely. So one of the things that you need to learn about, and this is a chapter in the Professional Development Guide, so please check it out. The webinar clips there are from people who have done this very successfully. But it's a concept called the informational interview. And the informational interview is basically an opportunity for you to go to a company and have a 30-minute conversation with someone about what they do. It is not a job interview. It's very important because when you contact that person, and I'll tell you how to get a hold of them in 1 second, but there are ways to do that too. It's easier than you think. When you contact that person and you ask them for an informational interview, they know what that word means. It means something very specific. So if you then went in ostensibly for an informational interview and you brought your resume and you started asking about employment, you're really putting that person on the spot, and it's not polite. And you know, chances are they're not hiring and they're not responsible for other positions that are being hired for in the company. So it's really clear that you use it as an opportunity to learn about that position. But you can ask things. You can ask them, what is their typical day like? What do they do? And then you can ask more broad questions about the industry. What are the challenges that this industry faces? What kind of preparation did you wish that you had had for this career as a student? You know, that's information it's golden. It's a treasure, and you're not going to get it from anyone else but that person. So, you know, you can also ask them questions like, what are typical salaries for people in this field in your experience in this area? That is also golden nugget of information, because someday, if you happen to be applying to a job, you know, in that area, and you get into an interview and negotiation phase, you're actually going to know your stuff. Furthermore, if the conversation goes well, they might ask, bring copies of your resume. They might ask you for it, and who knows, maybe in a month they'll be so impressed with you that you had the initiative to come talk to them and you seemed so interested in their job or their industry. Maybe an opportunity will come up, and maybe they'll call you up and say, hey, you know, I was wondering what your status is. Are you still interested in an opportunity because something's come up? Or at the very least, they're a new member of your network that you can then contact later to ask about positions or to ask about a negotiation salary, things like that. So there really are so many benefits to doing an informational interview. It's really a great tool. Now, how do you get informational interviews? What I would say, the number one ninja tool at your disposal is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is phenomenal. And if you're not on LinkedIn, you need to be on LinkedIn right now. And I don't just mean, you know, when I say get on LinkedIn, don't just create your account and let it sit there with no information in it. And above all, please post a picture. There's nothing more, off-putting, I think, to people than to get a request for a connection and there's no image, there's no photo of you. There's just a little icon of the head. Don't do that. If you're going to bother, get a nice picture. If you don't have a nice picture, dress up a little bit, get a friend in a room, have a LinkedIn picture-taking party with a digital camera. I know that they're out there, high resolution, that looks nice. You're going to put you can put all your information there, and sure, people are searching, but that's not the key way that LinkedIn is useful for you, especially if you're really early in your career. The way it is useful is as you connect, each person you connect to, your circle of first-degree connections is growing, but your circle of second-degree connections is growing exponentially. And furthermore, the second-degree connections are growing when you're not online, or when you're asleep, or when you're writing your paper, or you're doing your homework set, or whatever. And research has shown that 80% of hires come through networking, and they come through the second-degree connections, because it's so much wider than the people you individually know, but it's close enough, the second-degree connection is close enough that it's not awkward to navigate. So for example, you're on LinkedIn, you connect to lots of people, you connect to as many people as you can who you know. Then someday you type in the search engine, and I love to do this exercise. I like to type in SpaceX. SpaceX, kind of a cool company. I type in SpaceX into my search at the top of my LinkedIn. It tells me I have no fewer than 16 second-degree connections with people in SpaceX. All right? So I'm browsing through my second-degree connections, and one of them happens to be a senior HR person who works for SpaceX. Now, I'm not interested in doing HR work for high-tech companies, though I might be because, you know, I'm into careers. It's my job. Let's say I am, for argument's sake. And let's say, gosh, I really want to have an informational interview with him and just learn about what his job is like. Well, guess what? Our shared connection is one of my best friends from high school. So then I send an email to my best friend saying, hey, I noticed that you're connected to so-and-so at SpaceX. Could you get me an email introduction? Get an email introduction, bam, you're in. Because having that personal connection makes a big difference over just randomly emailing somebody in the company. Another strategy besides LinkedIn is your alumni networks at your universities. They keep track, they do a very good job of keeping track of these people. So go to your alumni office, see if they have some sort of listing, and go through that. And if there's anybody with a job that seems remotely interesting, email them. Say, hey, I got your information through the alumni office. I'm a student at such and such university. I'd really love to just do an informational interview with you. Would you be willing to chat with me? 99% of the time, they're happy to do it. One, because it's better than working for like a half an hour. And two, they want to help. They want to help you. So that's what I have to say kind of about how to learn about those industry connections. Thirdly, wait, I'll just mention, go to the local links events. If you're in a place where there's a local link event, go. There are industry people there every single time. They happen every 6 weeks. It's a great opportunity to just make connections and learn about what folks are doing. And that's all. Stephen, are you there? I think you may be muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Crystal. I apologize. I was muted, so thank you for the answer.
Common error, common mistake.
Yeah, that's right. A question that I've heard many times before has been asked here, and that is, how do I identify the skills I have as a physics student that will qualify me for a job in engineering? How do I identify my transferable skills?
That is a great question. And what I highly recommend everyone do, and Peter Fisk talks about this. A lot of the stuff I'm saying is in his webinar, but he's got even more wonderful nuggets of wisdom. But one thing he recommends is have a career notebook. Just get a spiral bound notebook. Doesn't have to be fancy. And in it, to start, go through and look back on every single experience you have ever had as a student. It could be courses. It could be your lab course. It could be something you volunteered for in the summer. It could be a summer job. It doesn't have to just be technical jobs. If you volunteered and did outreach, for example, at a local high school, that is, let's say you organized an outreach effort. That's leadership, that's teamwork, so keep all of those things in mind. Look at all of your experiences and sit down and write out a bullet point. If you could just write out a bullet point, when I organized a outreach effort at the local high school, convened a committee to, form a plan to do outreach, went to high schools, designed an outreach activity involving, planes or surface tennis, whatever. Or if you did research as an undergraduate student, and I have to take a moment to just say, having research experience as an undergraduate is everything when it comes to identifying transferable skills. And I'll tell you, those students, I say, oh, the graduates go and they get engineering jobs and computer science jobs. The unspoken caveat there is that they have done summer research. If you have not done any research by the time you get your undergraduate degree, it's tough. It's going to be tough for you to do anything but go to grad school. And I would even say it makes a difference for going to grad school as well. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to actively seek out research opportunities. It's so important. That said, let's say in an RAU program, you programmed a LabVIEW program to move around some controller motors. Those are examples of the kind of bullet points you would write. Write it out. Those are your building blocks. And I think that if you sit there and think, you'll come up with a very large list of things that that are basically transferable skills. Now, when it comes to actually applying for a job, the way I think of it is this. The job description is like a keyhole, okay? You have to write a resume that exactly fits that keyhole. You can't expect to use a generic key to open a specific lock. There's no such thing. So it's a specific lock and a specific key. That resume is the specific key. It is only 1 page long. It is specifically tailored to that job description. And you build your key out of Legos. The Legos is your big pile of transferable skills that you've written down in your journal. Think of that as the pile of Legos you have to work with to assemble a specific key, that is the resume, to fit the specific lock, which is the job description. And the tutorial that's actually on the professional development guide tells you exactly how to do this.
So Crystal, as a follow-up to that, you mentioned getting some kind of summer internship or doing an REU. What would that do for you? What skills would you learn that would help you get into graduate school or get a job?
Well, if you're doing actual research, most of the time, I've never known an undergrad who did a theoretical REU. I'm sure it exists, and I apologize to the viewers who are like, oh, yes, it does. But everybody I know has done sort of experimental type physics. So as an REU, you are going to learn how to use a screwdriver. You're going to learn how to use screws. You're going to learn how to machine things in a shop, perhaps. You're going to learn how to program. You're going to learn how to use MATLAB. You're going to learn how to take data with 3-axis probes, for example, or you're going to learn how to fix a vacuum system or troubleshoot a vacuum system, how to solder, how to build a circuit, how to use an oscilloscope. I mean, I could sit here and rattle off 100 things. These are the actual types of activities and technologies that job descriptions for engineers specifically ask for. And I challenge each of you to actually go to careers.aps.org, look on the 4-year degree offerings, what's posted for 4-year degree. You're going to see the exact skills, the exact experiences that are across the board common among REU students. I mean, it's basic experimental techniques in all that broad sense. That is what employers are looking for when they're hiring bachelors into these engineering, computer science, STEM jobs.
Okay, great, thank you. So now to change the conversation just a bit, there's a question here from someone who works in a physics department, and this may require offline discussion, but in case others are thinking that, can local physics department use APS materials on the careers website in their own department marketing?
Well, as a matter of fact, we have a product. Okay, well, it might be an offline discussion, but I do want to, I don't know what you mean by department marketing, but I want you to know of another resource that is available. The Physics Insights slideshow is something that we produce every other month. It's like basically every other month. And it is a PowerPoint slideshow. It's free. It's downloadable easily. It is always being updated with fresh content. What it contains are profiles of physicists working in really interesting non-academic areas, a diversity of areas. It includes all of that employment and salary statistics that I gave. It includes information on special opportunities for undergraduate students. It also includes information on kind of cool physics topics and research. And it is fully editable. If you download Physics Insight, it's easy. You just, in order to add your own slides, if you download it and just double click it, it opens as a slideshow. But if you go to PowerPoint first and then open the file from inside PowerPoint, it opens in edit mode. So you can add your own department slides, you can put your department colloquia information, open house information, whatever. It's designed to be displayed in common areas on those LCD monitors. Many schools have these kind of displays around their department. That is a tool that's readily available for any physics department to use to promote their own activities in their building, and also, obviously to furnish this kind of information. We have a careers brochure that highlights all of the things I talked about here that we're willing to share. So I guess I would need to know more information about what you mean by, quote, promoting your department. But if we need, feel free to follow up with an offline discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that answer out there. So following up with Crystal at her email address showing on the screen would be the best way to get that conversation started. But we certainly want to support your efforts to market physics.
Yes.
So, okay, so then back to the employment picture. There's a couple of questions here about additional things that undergrads might do to enhance their marketability. There's a question about whether getting passing the Fundamental of Engineering exam, it's a certification of some kind, or getting a math or computer science degree in addition to physics. Do you see those as really enhancing one's opportunities for jobs or graduate school?
Actually, that's a very interesting question.
Crystal, can I jump in really fast?
Oh, yeah.
We are at our hour mark, and we just want to be respectful of some people who might only have an hour for this webinar. We are going to stick around for a little bit and answer a few more of these questions because y'all have some really great questions that we want to make sure we get to. But I just wanted to do some housekeeping before we get started on that. Thank you again for coming, and we're going to get to a few more questions. If we don't get to your question today, you're welcome to email Crystal on the screen, or you're also welcome to email webinars@aps.org, and we will pass your questions along so that we can get your conversation started with either Crystal or Stephen. After the webinar today, it is being recorded. You will receive an email that has a link to the recording, and you'll be able to view that after about a day or two. And again, coming up this summer and fall, we have a few other great webinars that are coming up, like Acing the Physics GRE, Choosing a Grad School, Building a Successful Physics Career in Industry. And if you would like to continue receiving emails from us with information about those opportunities, just another reminder that URL is aps.org/careers/guidance/webinars. All right, Stephen, continue. Sorry. With your questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Thank you. You're jumping. Go ahead, Crystal.
And also, folks, you have to actually opt in. So if you want to get the emails, you have to opt in. We're not going to just automatically send them to you because you attended like we used to. So if you're interested, please opt in. Okay. Remind me the question, Stephen. Sorry.
It's are there things we can do that would enhance our marketability for a job or graduate school? And the two specific questions were getting an engineering certificate or certification, or a minor in computer science or some engineering discipline, for example, or math.
Yes, got it. That is a very good question. The question of certification, honestly, physics as a discipline doesn't use the certification system like the engineering discipline does. Therefore, I honestly don't feel comfortable saying anything beyond the following. The 50% of physics bachelors who go into the workforce and the large majority of those who get private sector jobs with engineering and computer science in the title are not certified. That I know. Because they're getting them with a physics degree. So that's what I'll say about that. Whether or not it would change or improve, I have no idea. We don't know that. Regarding the coursework, I think the key point is that the thing that makes those students attractive to the employers are their skills. First and foremost, those employers are not looking at they're not looking at your GPA. They don't care what courses you've taken, generally. If they're looking at a physicist, they're looking at this, they know that they need to be looking at the skills that you bring to bear. And that's what you're going to put first and foremost on your resume, and that is what's going to get their attention. So no, I would not say that those things are, based on the information I have, going to significantly improve your chances. I think the thing that will significantly improve your chances are doing research and writing a good resume that draws a very clear, direct line between the skills you have and the skills that are being asked for in that job description. And again, please watch the tutorial because it explains it all. It's very straightforward. Stephen, I think you may be muted again.
I did it again. I'm sorry. If I could add a comment on that. Sometimes people write a single resume and then try to tailor their match in a cover letter. And do you have a comment on that, whether that's an effective strategy?
Yes, I have a comment. It's not, and I don't recommend it. Generally speaking, a CV/resume, and they're totally different things. So let's clear this up. The CV is a laundry list of everything you've ever done in your entire professional life. So educational background, employment background, publications, grants, honors, awards, anything you can think of that has to do with your professional life. Curriculum vitae, that's what it means. The accumulated pile of information about your life. No one wants a CV when you're applying for a non-academic job. Well, national lab hiring practices are actually quite like academic hiring practices, so that's not true. But unless you're talking about academia or national labs, you're going to be submitting a resume, and the resume is 1 page long. So many people do. They'll kind of write out this thing that's kind of a summary. It's like a professional summary that includes everything, like a CV. There are almost no instances where that is actually going to help you. I can think of almost none. Maybe if you're going, like I said, for an informational interview and you just kind of want to leave, if they ask you for some sort of document that summarizes your professional background, you can leave that. But more importantly, and I think that something that will be much more helpful to you, LinkedIn does a really, really phenomenal job of organizing the information. Like if you fill out your LinkedIn profile, it's basically an online CV-ish type thing, but it's searchable by keyword, you see. If people are actually headhunting and they're looking for candidates, they're going to use LinkedIn and they're going to search on keywords and they're going to find you that way. So instead of having a paper thing that you're almost never going to hand out to anybody, and if you do, and I've had people do that to me, like I've had people come up to me after talks and like, here's my CV. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this in the trash because I'm not hiring anybody and we didn't have a conversation, and it's not a substitute for that. It's not a substitute for an actual connection. So yeah, instead of having this paper thing, I say have a really all-star LinkedIn profile and then have a card with your LinkedIn profile link on it, for example. That's one way to kind of, I think that would be a much more effective way to do that. So no, I don't think that general standard document is useful unless you need a full CV and you're applying to an academic or national lab job. What you will need to do is write a new resume for each job description. And the reason I'm saying no, don't have a general one and then make the connection with the cover letter is that people who are looking through these piles of resumes spend 30 seconds, okay? So you don't want them having to sift through name, objective, educational background, degrees, places work, you don't want them to go through 3/4 of a page before they actually get to your skills, A. B, you don't want them to waste a second of their time reading about skills that are not relevant. Because if they don't see you at the top half of the first page, and I had a very senior HR hiring manager who gave a career workshop say this. She looks at the top half of the first page. If you don't have her attention in the top half, forget it. Why waste all that real estate just so you can have the convenience of using the same document for everything? You can't. So what I recommend is writing a skills-based resume. And again, it's easy to make it one page long because you're only filling out the skills that are specifically relevant to the job description. Peter Fisk has a saying, the job of the resume is not to get you the job. Its purpose is to get you an interview. It's literally a document that gets you in the front door. And then in your interview, you can talk about all the other amazing things you did. Now, the purpose of the cover letter is to say exactly the same thing in words that your resume does. And it's especially useful if you're using the cover letter to address things that might seem like potential problems. For example, let's say you do have a really long period of time where you weren't working. You might address that in your cover letter. I mean, it's better to be sort of upfront. You may notice, or you may be wondering what was going on during those years, and then it gives you a chance to address that. Or you can say you want to apply for a job that's in a really different direction than everything that's in your resume. Say you've been doing this kind of research, really nitty-gritty research, and you want to take a complete left turn and you want to do something just really different. You need to say that in your cover letter and say, you may be wondering why I'm applying to this job. Here's the reason why. Because doing so, A, will tell the employer, no, you didn't actually apply to the wrong job, or that at least that you read the job description and you thought about it. And B, it gives you an opportunity to actually paint a picture in their mind of you in that job. So it's actually a really great tool. And the resume and cover letter should both be very targeted, both of them, targeted to that specific job description.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm afraid that'll have to be our last question. Elizabeth will give you some wrap-up information.
Yes, thank you, Stephen, and thank you again for watching today's webinar and asking so many really fantastic questions. We apologize if we didn't get to your question. If you think of a question later or you really want your question addressed and we didn't get to it, please email webinars@aps.org and we will try and get you an answer. Today's presentation again was recorded and you will receive an email containing a link to the recording. Please give us about 24 hours and thank you again. We hope to see you at our next webinar.